Welcome to the Board Game Marketing Podcast. Let's cue the intro. This is the #1 podcast to learn marketing strategies for your board game. Whether you're just starting on your first game or an experienced designer, you've come to the right place. My name is Nalin, and let's talk marketing for your game. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Board Game Marketing Podcast. In this podcast, I interview creators who have successfully funded their ideas on Kickstarter to learn more about their journey to launch and help you formulate your own plan. I also bring on experts in the tabletop space to talk about all the facets of marketing and building your game publishing company. If you've been listening for a while now, you know that I hold nothing back. So in these episodes, be prepared to hear me ask the hard questions and really get down to the finer details. Let's get started. Peter, who has launched Top Tail on Kickstarter. Hey, we're going to be, yeah, awesome. Well, we're going to be talking about Top Tail and his journey to this Kickstarter launch and relaunch. And, if you have any questions while we go through this conversation, feel free to drop it in the chat box. It'll appear on our end, and we'll be able to answer any questions that anyone might have. So, just to get started, I'd love it if, Peter, you could tell us more about yourself, your background, and also more about Top Tail too.
Absolutely. So, I'm 35 years old. I grew up in Northern California in the mountains. So if you know where Lake Tahoe is, just keep going north. And let's see, out of high school, I went into the Marine Corps, served 5 years, did 2 tours in Iraq. And then once I got out of the Marine Corps, I started going to college and got my degree in computer engineering. And then after that, I started at HP Inc. And I've been working there for almost 8 years now. So let's see, with HP, I mostly work on high-end computers, so desktop workstations, which are kind of a PC with server class hardware. So I design those, and I do a bunch of inventing at HP. Oh. And that kind of spilled over into my personal life here with Top Tail.
Yeah, that's really cool. That was going to be my question, actually. Like, how did you get from where you were at HP, doing this computer engineering stuff to create a card game?
Yeah, so actually, I maybe take a little bit of a step back. So in college, I was part of a group, a team of 4 guys that developed it was an audio inventory device for the visually impaired.
Wow.
And so essentially, you tag things with little RFID tags, and you scan a tag and record audio recording. And so you can, it's meant for wardrobe inventory. So, like if you have a shirt that says Top Tail, somebody that's completely blind can't tell what's on the shirt. They just feel the shirt, and it's a cotton shirt, right? And so the idea was you could go through your entire closet or drawers looking for a particular article of clothing by scanning through the tags, identifying what you want first.
That's incredible.
So, yeah, my mom is blind, and so she actually kind of came up with the issue. She's constantly having to ask my dad what shirt she's put on or whatever. So yeah, the inventing really started then. And so that was my senior project out of school. We tried a startup for a couple of years, but we all kind of just went our separate ways. So the startup dissolved, and then I just got the knack for inventing at HP, and eventually the concept for Top Tail came along, and I just ran with it.
Got it. So yeah, tell us more about Top Tail. What is this card game you speak of?
Sure. So Top Tail started out as a game I called Top That. And it was essentially a game with a bunch of topics, and for each topic, everybody would give a response, and you're supposed to top everybody's response. And so at the end of the round, everybody votes on the top response, and the winner gets the card. So it started out called Top That, and that was kind of the game mechanics. I ran into a little bit of a trademark infringement with Top That Toast. And so I reached out to the guy, said, hey, can I use the brand Top That? And he said, it's up to my publisher, and the publisher said no. And so I changed the name to Beat That, and so it was still kind of the same game. But then I found out that in the UK, publisher was in the process of releasing a game called Beat That.
Look at that.
And so both times I actually applied for trademarks. And that's how I found out that both names were already taken. And so the game started evolving a little bit more, and what really stood out during gameplay is when you had a topic where somebody started telling a story, and it's, relating an experience or even somebody else's experience, but just really genuine, interesting stories. And so that's where it emerged that the game should really be centered around telling stories. And so that's why it eventually got the name Top Tail. So I kept top, beat. I kept that concept of you're trying to have the best response, but the response evolved into being stories.
Yeah, I think there's like two key takeaways from that just section that you did right there too. Like, one, making sure there's a unique name so that it becomes something in the market that that isn't confused with something else in the market, for one. And the other thing is just listening to your audience, right? You mentioned that as you were, people were playing this game, the stories came out, people were telling stories, people were relating over stories, and then you kind of just went with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it certainly evolved, and that's the best way to describe it. I definitely tried to listen to every playtester that played the game. I've probably played the game with, 300 or so people at this point, and then another large chunk of people have played it on their own. But everybody really resonates with telling stories, and especially if you have, multiple generations that are playing the game. It's incredible. You hear stories from your parents that you never imagined, that you would never hear in casual conversation. And then same thing if you have kids. When playing with younger kids, I've played with kids as young as 4, and the kids really enjoy hearing the stories from the adults, and they'll actually sit patiently and listen because it's a story about an experience that their parent had or about some adult had. And then when the kids get their chance to tell their stories, it may not be, based on a lot of experience, but they just love having the opportunity to tell their story. They always want to tell stories, right? So if you give them the focus of attention, they're going to eat it up.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, again, we're talking about storytelling here. And when I'm thinking about marketing and like putting things online, storytelling isn't the easiest thing to like kind of explain in a way, because you can say the word storytelling when people don't really get immersed in it. So like, tell us more about kind of what marketing you did to lead up to the campaign and what kind of learnings you had, because I think that it'd be really helpful for people to hear more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So marketing, I've tried just about anything and everything. What I've found is that people actually playing the game is absolutely the best marketing I can get, right? If they can actually try it out, then they immediately get it and they immediately like it. Second to that is just developing personal connections with people. So what I've found is Kickstarter in particular is all about trust. If your audience has a reason to trust you and they like what you're selling, or they like the concept of what you're selling even, then they'll go in for it. if you can't gain that trust, then they're not going to back you. They're not going to give you a second look. And so the most success that I've had, I've done giveaways, I've done ads across several different websites, types of websites, newsletters. I've forms of marketing. I've paid for reviews. I've done unpaid reviews. The most success that I've had is that personal interaction with people. And maybe that's just because as a game about storytelling, I don't have any, sexy imagery. I don't have minis. I don't have really complex mechanics that get people interested. And so you really have to, I guess, dumb it down to human needs, right? Humans want to connect and be social. And not everybody, right? This is considered a party game, and not everybody's into party games too. So,
yeah, I think that also speaks to kind of the larger kind of nature of games too, right? Like, why do we play games? We play games to pass away the time. We play games to play. Why do humans play? To interact with one another, to have conversations, to enjoy time with each other. So I think it really is. It resonated with me when you said it all comes down to that trust factor, right? Mm-hmm. That trust and that play factor. And I think that's probably what you were trying to get at too, by saying that all these paid stuff, all this other stuff, it was just kind of noise at the end of the day, because it's that trust and that one-on-one connection that you could have with your potential backer going into a Kickstarter campaign that really makes the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And so kind of circling back, I mean, it's hard not to reach a wide audience without paying for advertisements and such. So I'm really going to have to evolve my ad strategy. My Kickstarter video, it all started out with cavemen or early man surrounding a campfire telling stories. And so it starts out with this, imagery of people in nothing but furs and leather around a campfire. And that's supposed to, get the audience interested. But I'm telling a story in that commercial where, humans started and civilization began based on telling stories, right? It's telling about spiritual events. It's telling about, how to survive, different places where you can go in the world. It started out sharing all these stories, and we've kind of evolved into a society that's gotten away from that. And so I tried to make the commercial a little bit more about, this is getting back to the roots of what started civilization, is telling stories.
Got it. That's a really cool idea for a video there. And you talked about how you conceptualize the video. Yeah. How did you actually make the video? Because I think that you took into your own hands, right? And a lot of people want to take into their own hands too. So I'd love if you could kind of talk through the process and kind of how you weighed, outsourcing it versus doing it yourself, and how you just went about doing it.
So with the video, I'm very, very, very fortunate. So my brother-in-law is a cinematographer, and he does stuff for National Geographic and Nikon and Volkswagen and all these big companies, right? And so he offered to do the video for free. All I had to do was supply the actors and the scene. So I live on a 35-acre piece of land, so no problem having an open space with a campfire. And then my wife is part of a jousting troupe, and the jousting troupe is kind of like a acting group as well. And so they were all for it, right? I just bought them furs and leather, and they, made their costumes, and we made a just a really fun night out of it. So
yeah, sounds like a really fun time. And from there, how did you use the video in your marketing, and also what kind of results did you see from that too? Yeah,
so I had it, of course, as my Kickstarter video. So I had fairly good plays on it. I think the first time around, so I did 2 Kickstarters. You mentioned that earlier. The first time my play rate was like 25%. And so we trimmed it down between the first and second time, and I was able to get the play rate up to, I think, 40 or 50%, which
Wow.
it's a 2-minute commercial, so not everybody's going to sit through the whole thing. But I adjusted as I went along. And then I also created a 30-second clip that I used for Facebook ads. And I didn't dump a bunch of money into Facebook ads using the video. I might have spent like 50 or 60 bucks just to try it out. But I got quite a few click-throughs. I think I got the cost per click down to like 30 cents, somewhere around there. But it didn't translate. It didn't convert into backers. So I think the commercial was good at getting people's attention and got their interest, but it didn't get the right interest, right? I mean, they wanted to see more maybe, but they weren't in the market for a board game necessarily. And, maybe that's the targeting that I did. I don't know. I've done quite a lot of A/B testing with Facebook ads, and I get good cost per click ratios on certain, certain imagery or videos. I'm just not getting the conversion rates, which I think it goes back to the whole trust thing. Like, it doesn't have a lot of components that people just want on their shelf. And so they need to trust that it's a game that they're going to enjoy. And I think what my focus is more going to be on in the future is trying to get, really good reviews, trying to get, influencers to really help build that trust, right? Because if you can get an influencer that says, yeah, it doesn't have a lot of sexy components, but I love playing it, then that'll make up for not having the crazy components, right?
Yeah. And you touched a little bit on this earlier too. You mentioned pretty much the learnings from the first launch to the second launch and how you trimmed down your video and you had such a higher kind of watch rate on Kickstarter itself. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the launch not getting funded and coming back, because I know a lot of people, are in this situation too, who are in the group and want to learn more about, like, what do you do after you don't successfully fund the first time? Like, talk us through that. What were you feeling? What were you experiencing? And like, what were your thoughts going in, at that point?
Yeah, so that's a complex question to answer, but I'll attempt it. So my first Kickstarter started mid-July, and it ran for 35 days. I set a goal of $8,000, and I think by the end of it, I hit about $5,000. And so I realized I set my goal too high. After the campaign, I took a look at kind of where I'm at in the year, and I could either wait until early 2021, or I could try to get it in before the holiday season. And so I figured, what the heck? I'll go for before the holiday season. And that didn't give me a lot of time to make adjustments. So I trimmed the video a little bit. I polished up a lot of the content that was in the campaign story. I researched a new manufacturer, and so I was able to get my costs down. And just, consistently researching every aspect of publishing and fulfillment. And I learned enough that I was able to confidently lower my goal from 8,000 to 6,000. And being that I hit 5,000 in the previous campaign, and these numbers are approximate, but I figured, getting a little extra, getting to 6,000, that should be no problem. So I set the target where I knew that I could reach it in a reasonable period of time. And so the second campaign, I think I shortened it to 25 days. But besides that, I if I would have waited until 2021, I would have focused more on getting that upfront audience, which takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, but it's important, right? I knew I had a core audience that was able to get me to 5,000. I knew I could grow that core audience to at least get to 6,000. And so that's what I did. I ended up pulling in a little over 6,500 was my total funding. And then I've got it on BackerKit now to try to get a little bit more pre-orders. But at the same time, I'm not expecting to get a ton of money up front before I build that trust, before I get it out in the community and have people start playing it.
Yeah, so that was a great kind of overview. You mentioned and that tweaked from. How did you decide where to make changes? Because a lot of people just sure where they could optimize even.
Oh, for sure. So I listened to the community. A lot of people said that the funding goal just was out of reach for what I was trying to do. That was a no-brainer, reduce the funding goal. And honestly, the funding goal is probably the biggest knob that you have. And it goes back into what your business aspirations are. So my business aspirations are to make this the first game in a series and to continue to sell this game as I develop new volumes and start selling those new volumes. And so I really wanted to commit to a fairly large volume order for a first-time creator. And so that's what guided my funding goal. I actually set the bar at 15,000 units, and at 6,000, 15,000, or 1,500 units, that would give me plenty of funding to produce and fulfill the game. I ended up going with 2,000 units, and those will be produced this late winter, spring time frame. But the key there is I'm growing a business. I'm not just getting enough games to fulfill backers. The backers helped me start this business. And so that $6,000 funding goal, I didn't want to lower it any further down because, I could have lowered it to 5,000 because I reached 5,000 on the first campaign. But 5,000 would have made it a little bit more uncomfortable to get 15,000 units. So it's a big picture kind of thing with the funding goal.
Yeah, let's talk about kind of that big picture too, right? A lot of people kind of approach Kickstarter as kind of like the end all be all, right? Like, hey, I've launched my game, I get funded, I'm good, right? Right. But like now you're talking about the business side of things. It's like there's a whole world beyond Kickstarter. How do you conceptualize your game in this post Kickstarter world?
Yeah, so Top Tail really suits itself for a series, right? So the first edition, and this isn't the final product by any means, this is just the early prototype, but the first volume is going to have 144 cards. I've already got over 450 candidates for cards to do multiple volumes, and that number just keeps growing, right? And essentially how I'm doing it is I'm building this pool of topic cards, and I'm trying to take really good sets of cards, make them into volumes. And as I grow this large pool of topics, I'll just keep adding on volumes. So I believe I can spit out at least 3 of the, I call it the OG series, the original game. But 3 in the original game series, I can easily achieve that and have, quality decks, not just random, topics to fill up the box, but quality decks. And then I've found that Top Tail can be easily modified just slightly to create spin-off games. And so at least one of them that I have in the works is Top Tail, Tall Tail, where each topic you're encouraged to embellish the truth. You're encouraged to put a spin on it, right? You're encouraged to get a little bit creative. And it's really well suited for kids. Trying to get kids to tell creative stories. And sometimes kids don't have experiences to fall back on. And so, if you don't have the experience, you make something up. So Top Tail, Tall Tale will be a spin-off, and I haven't decided whether I want to do multiple volumes or just try to really nail down one solid volume. But then I'm planning a Not Safe for Work edition, other kind of themed editions of Top Tail where it all is based on the same mechanics, where you tell stories relating to topics and you vote for the favorite topic. Everybody votes. And so no matter which volume you mix in, you're playing the same game. You're still playing Top Tail. And so my business strategy is based on a series. Mm-hmm. And the strategy is I need to really evolve, or I really need to solidify this Top Tail brand. So everything is based on Top Tail. And then another aspect of the game, which I haven't talked about yet, is the slogan, which is get to know your fellow human. And that's another thing that evolved out of the game is as you're telling stories, you really get to know people. Like in a 15-minute game with somebody, you can tell how many siblings they have, where they grew up, what they do for a living, it's mind-boggling the information you learn about somebody. And there's probably some social engineering aspects to the game that I haven't really, got my mind around. Man, I lost my train of thought. But
you were talking about the slogan that you have there.
Yeah, right. So the slogan, get to know your fellow human, all of the games are meant to have some element of getting to know people. Whether it's embellishing the truth, you're still getting to know somebody because there's probably some truth to their story. And so Top Tail as a brand, as a card game series, and a game that helps people get to know each other. Those are kind of my two pillars that I'm growing this series off of. And if I do it right, if I can grow it into a popular game, then it's going to be hopefully one of those household names, right? Something that people know about, Cards Against Humanity or Exploding Kittens. That's the vision, but getting there is definitely not easy.
No, that was a great answer. Yeah, so instead of just approaching Kickstarter as kind of like a one-off launch period, it's kind of approaching it as an entry point for something even bigger on the back end, where you get your name out there, you kind of get raving fans from this first launch, and then you can launch a second edition, a third, a Tall Tale version, and all these other things on the back end too, because you have those core fans already.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's games where they'll invest a ton of money because they only have the one game. They might try to do expansions or something later, but they only have plans for that one game, and so you really have to hit it big if you want to get big numbers. My strategy is just get enough to build a solid base and then snowball it, right? So, I'm hoping either at the end of this year or early next year, I'll be ready for the second volume of the OG and Tall Tale. And the idea there is put both on Kickstarter, try to leverage the audience that I grew from the OG Volume 1, and build that audience with the second Kickstarter, and then a third, a fourth, see how far it goes. But the idea is start small and snowball it versus just put a bunch of money into it and hope that you go big.
Got it. No, that's like, it's that slow and steady, right? Yeah. Slow and steady wins the race. And I know that you're already talking about your next Kickstarter. I'd love to kind of touch on too, like what marketing were you doing during the campaign phase itself? On the first one that wasn't successful, and also on the one that was successful, like what things did you do? What things did you change? And what would you recommend people kind of try?
Yeah, so before the first campaign, I probably spent, close to $2,000 on buying prototype games. And one mistake there is that I went with the local source, and I didn't kind of shop around. So I spent a lot of money on actually prototyping the games. And then I paid for review or preview videos. And I think I ended up with 8 or 9 reviewers and previews that, I could use that to help build trust. Like, these other people are, giving the game good reviews and saying good things. And so that's probably where I put the bulk of my money up front. During the campaign, actually leading up to the campaign, I did some ads on Facebook and Instagram, and I got followers through that, right? I got Facebook page followers or Instagram followers, but in the end, not many of them converted to backers. I did attempt to get email list growing, and I think by the time I launched my first campaign, I was up to about 150 emails. And honestly, I should have tried to grow that more. I should have focused on the emails a little bit more. But I think part of the problem is I tried too many things at once. And it was a good learning experience, but it spread me pretty thin. It spread my budget pretty thin, right?
Yeah,
totally
understand.
Yeah, and over the first campaign, I think I learned kind of what worked okay and what didn't work for me and for my particular game. But I've certainly noticed in just talking to other publishers, other Kickstarter creators, you really got to figure out what's right for your game. And, if you have flashy, sexy components, you focus on the artwork, you focus on the design. With a party game like this, you really got to focus on building, trust with people that want to back your campaign. And so that's a lot of personal interaction. By the time I got to my second campaign, I more or less exhausted my marketing budget. And so I essentially just relied on the first campaign backers, and then I reached out to as many friends and family as I could to make up for the difference. And in the end, my network, friends, family, coworkers, they account for probably over half of my backers and half of my funding goal.
Got it. Yeah, no, this is really great, insight on what you were doing in the background, right? Don't spread yourself too thin. We all fall into that trap all the time. It's okay, I could do A, I could do B, I can do C, D, E, F, G. I could do them all. Right. But where does that get you? Right? So no, I'm glad you brought that up because, like you said, focus on, look at what works for your particular campaign. Focus on what works that will take you forward towards your goal, and you won't be spread too thin.
Yeah. And what I found worked best for my game, my strategy, was that one-on-one, interpersonal relationships. Playtest events were huge. I got a lot of really good support from those. But then COVID, of course, it's got to creep into everybody's lives, right? So that prevented me from going to conferences. I did try to do a lot of play tests where it was over Zoom or over some sort of video chat. And Top Tail works well if you can see the other people. But so I had good play tests when I was using Zoom because everybody's kind of in front of a camera for the most part. I tried Tabletopia. The game is free to play on Tabletopia right now. But with Tabletopia, a lot of people just are looking at the table, the screen. And so the gameplay isn't quite there, right? You're just having a phone conversation, which it works okay, but really if you could see body language, if you could see emotions, that's what makes the game really, really impactful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to 2021 where I actually have the game where, people that play it, a lot of people I play it with aren't trusting of Kickstarter, or they don't know what to do with Kickstarter. They don't know what it is. They just want to buy the game. I've had so many people try to buy my prototype copies, which I can't offer to everybody. And so I've missed a lot of opportunities to sell the game where those people don't want to go on Kickstarter and try to back the game, or, they don't want to pre-order. They just want it. And so I'm really looking forward to being able to get to conventions, having people play it, doing local events where I have people play it. And then I'm hoping that, just word of mouth eventually helps grow my audience. And we'll see on the next round. I'm definitely up for trying more marketing strategies, but I think my focus is mostly going to be on, trying to do marketing efforts that really help build that trust and get that personal interaction going.
Yeah, no, that was a great wrap up of the whole conversation and kind of where you hope to go. Before we end this call, though, 2 questions for you. One, someone asked, who is manufacturing your game?
Sure. So I'm going with Meja. So I'm part of the Indie Game Alliance, and Indie Game Alliance has relationships with several suppliers, and I got, kind of encouraged to check out Meja, and I've been really happy with them. They're not the big they're not the big design house that like Panda Games or other big houses have, and so you have to do more work up front with the artwork. So I've learned that, but they have unbeatable prices on their games. So being that I'm trying to build this as a business, I need to make sure it's profitable and that it's not a one-hit wonder. So, Meja.
Great. And the second thing is, I know you mentioned this before, but where can people go to get copies of Top Sail right now?
Yeah, so right now it's available for pre-order through BackerKit. So if you back the campaign, you get access to kind of special pricing. If you haven't backed the campaign, you get a copy for $20, and that comes with free shipping. And then you can buy additional copies if you want. But pre-order right now is on BackerKit. Eventually, once I have all the games, I'm planning to sell through Amazon. So backers will get the games first, and soon after, it'll be available on Amazon. And I'm targeting the $20 price tag, and it'll be available through Prime. So you get the same deal whether you pre-order now or buy it on Amazon. That's a secret I'll divulge here, but but yeah, if you can't wait, BackerKit's the way to go.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on with us and sharing your journey, Peter. I know it's an exciting one because not a lot of people have gone through this, launch and relaunch journey that you have. So thank you for coming to share this with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity. It's a roller coaster for sure.
All right. Well, thanks and have a good night.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, everybody.
And that wraps up our episode today. If you found what we talked about today helpful in any way, please be sure to leave a review to help others find this podcast. And most importantly, if you're feeling that fire and you're ready to get started on your Kickstarter campaign, be sure to head to the show notes of the podcast. I've linked some of my resources that others have used to successfully launch and get funded. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Board Game Marketing Podcast. For daily tips and advice, find us in the Board Game Marketing group on Facebook. See you next week.